So you just got your completed reserve study, and it can look overwhelming. There's a lot of pages and a lot of tables and graphs. Well, we want to do everything we can to help you get the most value out of your reserve study. That's why we prepared this Breaking Down the Reserve Study webinar. Our goal is that your association heads towards a safe and secure, improved future. And that happens when you fully understand the guidance provided in the reserve study. So in this portion of the webinar, we start with the cover and take you through to the back of the report, giving you an overview of this valuable document that you have in your hands. I'll point out a few gems that are right there in plain sight and set you up to find and understand the reserve study's 3 main results.
Well, thank you, Paige, and hello, all you hardworking managers and board members. Thank you for taking time out of your day today to join us. We created this webinar based on all those requests that we received to help you understand what this document is that you're getting into your hands. You decided to update it, and now you've got it, but the question is, what do you do with it? How do you get maximum value from it? And what is it telling you? All reserve studies contain 3 basic results, which I'll discuss in a few minutes, but there's much more that a reserve study can tell you if you know what you're looking at. And it reminds me of a friend who was a minor league baseball player. And one year he was invited to the Dodgers spring training squad for their major league team. And he told the story about famous Dodger base runner Maury Wills spending an hour and a half walking his group of minor leaguers around the base paths, discussing the intricacies of going from home to first, then first to second, and second to third, and finally from third to home. An hour and a half discussing the nuances of a circuit that most people just run in a few seconds. Now, I'm not going to spend an hour and a half today, but in the next 30 minutes, I'll help you start to pick up what different things mean, gaining a next level understanding of this new document that you have in your hands. This is the outline that we're going to follow for today's program, taking you through the issues that get you familiar with that document that you paid good money to receive. So let's start at the beginning. And the first question is, major questions: who, what, and when? What am I looking at here? What do I think about it? How do I start to absorb it? And it may be 50 pages. It may be 150 pages. So the question is, where do you even start? So let's start with the cover page. And the first question is who? And look at the highlight here. It shows the credentials of the person who prepared it. What you want to look for is someone who has an RS or PRA behind their name. There'll be usually a RS or PRA and their credential number. That's the credential of a reserve study professional. You don't necessarily get what you're looking for with an engineer or an architect or a contractor or an MBA even. You're looking for someone who is familiar with the nuances of reserve study components, terminology, calculations, the multi-year funding plan, all those kinds of things, and you get that from someone with an RS or PRA. Next, what are you getting? Well, there's 3 types of reserve studies, 3 levels of service. This one here is an update no site visit. And for those of you, many of you who've been to our previous webinars probably know what this is. But since again, about half of you haven't been to previous webinars, there's 3 levels of service. There's a full reserve study and 2 different update products: update with site visit and update no site visit. Now, the full reserve study is typically only done once we know that there's 85,000 square feet of asphalt and 127,000 square feet of roofing. It is what it is. You don't need to hire us to reestablish those numbers. And the with site visit is typically done every 3rd year. That's now national best practice. That's new information since Champlain Towers South fell in 2021. And the no site visit is a great, very inexpensive, but valuable update that many associations do in those in-between years 2 and 3, in between that every 3rd year product. So know what you're getting, and even think about what you're asking for in the proposal process. When was our last with site visit update? When was the last time someone was on site? So are you just looking for a no site visit update at this point in time, or a with site visit update? And this is where you see it right on the cover. Okay, when? There's a number of dates that you'll see in a reserve study. The key date is when it begins, when its effective date is. And for a number of years now, we've been emphasizing the perishable aspect of a reserve study by putting an expiration date in, December 31st or 365 days after that beginning date, to help clients understand that this is not a 10-year document. We are documenting, it's a study of what's going on at the association right now. And every reserve study is good for 1 year. After that year that is prepared, all the observations are old. The reserve balance is old. The recommendation is old and very much less significant and appropriate for guiding the association forward. So look for a beginning date. Also look for when it was prepared. That'll give you an idea if this was the original reserve study delivered for them, or if it was an update, things like that. So look for that kind of information as you're guiding the association forward. Give me a moment here to reclaim my screen credentials. There we go. And I mentioned earlier, there's 3 results that every reserve study will have. When I was preparing for this webinar, I was thinking, okay, should I get one of our reports and a couple from a couple of our different competitors and show you the similarities and differences? And I just started doing that, and I realized it would just be tremendously confusing. So I'll just talk about the information that you need to look for. You're not looking for gems or key information in all 50 or 150 pages. You're looking for 3 primary results: the component list, the reserve fund strength, and the funding plan. This tells you where you are physically, where you are financially, and where to go from here. Specifically, that component list will look something like this. It's a table description of projects. It's not description of assets, because like here with asphalt, you can see asphalt seal project is every 5 years, but the resurface project is every 20 years. So we're not talking just asphalt. You're talking which project. And it may be replace, it may be resurface, it may be repair, it may be modernize, but we're talking about projects. The useful life in years, the remaining useful life in years, where 0 means it needs to be done now, and the current cost. Reserve study brings all costs current to the effective start date. And as you can imagine, in all the reserve studies we've been doing in the last year, we spend a lot of time updating these current costs to make sure that we are on top of what the current costs are with all the inflation that we've had recently. So for those of you who had reserve studies completed last year, boy, there was a lot of work to do to refresh these costs. And if you were comparing to the reserve study prior, probably a significant difference between costs prepared for your 2023 reserve study and the costs that appeared in your prior reserve study. Now, from this information, we are able to create a map of the reserve expenses. And I like putting it in a graphical sense because it gives you kind of a fingerprint of what's going on at your association. It helps you know what projects are ahead of us. There's no reason to be surprised. Reserve study helps you get the information you need to see the future clearly. You can see that there's going to be, in the second, third year, a couple of big expenses. You get a couple of years break, another large expense year, then a few years of light expenses. But something big is downstream. This could be roofing. This could be an elevator modernization. We know those things are going to happen. Know them now. There is no reason to be surprised by these things, even though they're a long ways downstream. Okay, so understand what your reserve, kind of the rhythm of your reserve expenses. And then the question is, do we have enough? It may seem like piles of money. The association is a big, multi-million-dollar not-for-profit real estate corporation. And in many cases, if not most cases, it should have significant financial assets. But the question is, do you have enough at your association? And the answer is, you typically measure adequacy by percent funded. Percent funded is the ratio of your physical deterioration to your reserve cash. And so it's a nice way for large associations, small associations, new associations, old associations, all to be able to compare how are we doing? How well does our reserve cash fit our reserve needs? And so think about it in terms of reserve cash, percent funded, not the actual cash, because You could have a tiny brand new association, and $500,000 could be an incredible lot of money. But for a 150 unit association that's 20 years old facing a roofing project, $500,000 could be woefully inadequate. So think about percent funded. And the reason is because this is what we learn. If we plot percent funded, and I go from 0 to 120% here, it is very possible for associations to have surplus cash. If your association has what we call a weak percent funded, meaning it's in the 0 to 30% range, look how much exposure you have to special assessments, basically running out of cash and needing an extra source of income. When your reserves are weak, you need to have extra cash to be able to do your projects. And then the opposite is true. When your reserves are strong, above 70% funded, basically all you have are natural surprises. And those are the things that you have special assessments for. That's why they were created in your governing documents. You should not be having emergency special assessments for a roof that deteriorated in plain sight, right on schedule, over 20 years. So percent funded does tell you a lot of information about where you are, what's going on with your association at this point in time. And so bottom line is, if your association is in the 0 to 30% range, you're basically pretty much in trouble. Prior boards haven't set enough money aside, you're behind, and you're at significant risk of not being able to pay the bills for necessary projects coming up at the association. Okay, so now knowing where you are starting, you have to figure out, okay, how are we going to get to the future? What do we do? And we've done entire webinars on this subject, and we'll have another webinar, I believe in April, on breaking down the reserve funding process, where we'll talk about the nuances of all this. But in general, as far as for just understanding the big picture of what a reserve study is telling you, typically reserve funding is in the range of 25% of your total budget, a quarter of your total budget. Often it ranges, we see clients commonly from 15 to 40%, but it's going to be a big chunk of your budget. So if you are getting a reserve study for the very first time, you look at the recommended funding and you say, my goodness, that's a big number. And then you compare it to your overall budget. There's a pretty fair chance it's going to be in the range of 15 to 40% of everything. It's going to be a big number. So brace yourself for that. That is entirely normal. All right, well, let me talk about walking through the reserve study itself. You get it, you're looking at it, and I told you about the cover. I told you about the key things to look for. But typically, our reserve studies and those of our competitors are organized the same way, where the key information is at the beginning. We have an executive summary. Most of our competitors have an executive summary. And then at the back of the report is typically the inventory details. So the back of the report is extra information, detailed information on what we saw when we were looking at your ironwork, what we saw when we were looking at your garage doors. And here I can even see that at this association, the maintenance, repair, and replacement is the responsibility of the individual owners. So no funding is required. So this is where you get that kind of detail. So when you're thinking, where the heck are our garage doors in our reserve component list? You can see back here and say, oh, at our association, it's private property. But on the executive summary, and let's look at it here. It's a no site visit, number of units, the date from and to. The findings and the recommendations are as of January 1, the starting reserve balance, the fully funded or that target reserve balance, and that results in the association being about 52% funded. You see that here in the chart, which, as we showed in that chart just a moment ago, it's about a medium risk of special assessment, a medium risk of running out of cash. And our recommendation is for $4,600 of reserve funding per month. And that's a little bit of an increase from their $4,320 in the last year. So kind of a big picture. And then there will be the component list that follows. So that's, bottom line is, look for the key 3 elements right at the beginning of a reserve study. Should be likely in the first 10 pages. The bulk of the reserve study is a lot of details that don't by themselves make or break, and you don't have to memorize all this stuff. Okay, in the body of the report, you will see a narrative that talks about your funding goal, what we're trying to accomplish. Those of you who've been to prior webinars know the terms that I'm about to say: full funding, threshold funding, and baseline funding. Those are different goals. We tend to be a full funding goal company here at Association Reserves. We like to have our clients set up for success. The other kind of things you're going to find out are the methodology. How did we come about getting this information together? What computational method did we use? And you may see words like a straight line or cash flow, things like that in here. And then this is a sneak preview. At this point in time, National Reserve Study standards require 20 years of income and expenses. And since this is for 2023, in the next couple of months, the newly updated National Reserve Study standards will come out, and they are requiring a minimum of 30 years of income and expenses. So again, we're looking far into the future, far enough that will help you anticipate those big projects, far enough that it will help you not be surprised, and far enough that that cash flow plan will set you up for success. And just a reminder that you're never really done, because everything is always changing. Think about what we just talked about. The starting balance is going to change actually month to month. Inflation and interest changes each year. Inflation is fortunately starting to come down a little bit. Interest is fortunately starting to come up a little bit. And associations are getting more safe investment vehicles. Current costs are changing. We have to update those in your reserve study, and the current conditions, how they're wearing and tearing, how technology might make your building's entry intercom system obsolete, things like that. What are the current conditions at your association? But those are the fundamentals of understanding a reserve study, basically beginning to end.
At Association Reserves, we make the present less stressful and the future more secure. If you want to join us in this mission, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below on what you'd like to see us address in a future video. Let's plan for your best future.